ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this live webinar, webcast with Ted McLyman. And I am Doug Fine, and I run Defined Performance Solutions. And Ted, I think you're the first person that we've talked to that is actually in Augusta with me. So I want to welcome you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, there are people that live in Augusta, and we have electricity too.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Ted because he's got a fantastic bio. He's done a lot, and you're gonna see his background in the kind of things he's going to share today. So here we go with Ted McLyman. Ted is an entrepreneur, a business owner, author, speaker, and trainer. He's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, and he's an Ironman All World age group triathlete. So you can take me, Ted. I know you could take me down. You could, yeah. So Ted has over 30 years of award-winning experience helping individuals and organizations achieve peak performance. He's got a BA in social relations from Colgate, an MA in public administration from Pepperdine, and an MS in performance technology from Boise State University. He's the founder of the Apex Behavioral Solutions Group. He's a financial advisor and an agent. He's an economics instructor at the U.S. Naval Academy, aide to the Undersecretary of the Navy for Financial Management. When you were on active duty, Ted?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
In uniform, all about money. Last couple things, he taught at the Marine Corps Financial Management School, and he was an artillery officer, an executive officer, and on a battle assessment team during Operation Desert Storm. The very last thing I'm going to talk about is books. He's authored 3 books on behavioral finance, created QuickScan Money Temperament Assessment. He's been a technical consultant to Behind the Money program, a TV program at Impact Television, and director of behavioral assessment and an advisory board member at DreamSmartAcademy.com. So Ted, you know what? You're clearly an underachiever, and I don't know what I'm going to do about that with you. But we may explore that, okay?
There you go. There we
go.
go.
So Ted, this is the time we can be a little bit more free, and I would really love to. Your bio says one thing, but tell me about a little bit about your journey. Your personal journey, and where did you get so fired up about helping people with their money?
Well, I grew up in upstate New York, around Cortland, New York, just south of Syracuse. I've got 800 words for snow. Most of them are bad. Really, was an above average high school student, basically more interested in sports, played football, track, skied, quite successful there. And I was recruited heavily out of high school to play football. And I learned real early as a high school athlete that I was not going to go any farther than college.
Yeah.
So my goal was to get into college, and I want to go to a good school that would hopefully teach me how to read, write, and think, and then use that as an opportunity to move into other things. So I decided to go to Colgate, a small liberal arts school, really good school, and they did in fact teach me how to read and write. And because I decided to go into the Marine Corps my freshman year in a commissioning program, and the goal at that time was that all you needed was a 2.0 to get commissioned. So I had a goal. You know what I mean? So I like to tell people that with my GPA of about 2.7 to 3.0, I was responsible for a lot of people getting into medical school, graduate school, and law school. So thank you very much.
Yes.
And I do apologize for the ones that got into law school. But if you've ever seen upstate New York, it's dairy cows and snow. And went to the big city, Washington, D.C., Quantico Commission, started my Marine Corps career, had no intention of staying in the Marine Corps. I thought it was going to be, 3 or 4 and out, get some money for graduate school, then do something else that everybody else says you're supposed to do. Well, the Marine Corps had the foresight to send me to Hawaii for my first duty station.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was breathtaking. It's analogous, and everybody's watched The Wizard of Oz, and that scene where the house drops on the witch, the door opens, and Dorothy walks through from black and white to color. Well, that was me going through the Pakaloa Highway, going from Oahu to Kaneohe in my first duty station. And I could not believe that there was a place like that. So my first duty station in Hawaii, got married there soon after, brought my beautiful wife out that I'd known through high school, married, and we started our Marine Corps career in Kaneohe. And again, didn't think we were going to stay. Had the opportunity to do a lot of interesting things there. But more importantly, I started working with young people. And I say young people, they're not that different in age than I was. And it became obvious to me that as a Marine Corps officer, my job is to motivate, to help people achieve peak performance, to help people understand what they're good at. And the Marine Corps is excellent at that. Marine Corps, we're excellent trainers. We're excellent at taking people and challenging them and helping them to achieve things they didn't know they could do.
There you go.
There was a caveat. Hawaii is a high income place, a high expense place.
Sure.
And we're finding that a lot of our young troops and young officers and even staff commissioned officers, financially, we're having problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing the cascading effect of how bad money choices were having an impact on performance, security clearances, retention, domestic problems, domestic violence, substance abuse, the whole thing. And, as the Marine Corps does things, they say, hey, Lieutenant, you got a background on this, go fix it. So I started working with these kids. At that time, got certified to do GEDs for St. Louis High School. So when we were floating, we would do high school courses. Now, this is back in the day when a lot of young Marines had the option to join the Marine Corps, go to jail. You know what kind of stuff I'm talking about there?
Yeah,
we don't
heard
do
that
anymore, but it was an interesting period of time.
Yeah.
But super, super people. And
Yes.
From there, I put a letter in to get out of the Marine Corps, and I was going to go out and do some other things, and they turned me down. They said, we like you so much, we're going to have you do something else, and you're going to take another set of orders. And they sent us to Japan, and I was there alone for a while. Then I brought my family over. And in exchange for that, they said, we're going to let you go to graduate school.
Okay.
So I had an opportunity to pick up my first degree in public administration, where I really, it's systems analysis and looking at public organizations. It's an MBA for people that don't have a profit motive.
Gotcha.
Of the government. And we got into that. But at that point, I'm going, this is kind of cool. And my payback for going to school was going to the Naval Academy and teaching economics.
Awesome.
Now, you have to understand, when I showed up to teach economics, not only were most of the staff on the academy in shock, but a couple of old econ professors back at Colgate are still rolling in their graves that I was there.
Yeah, the 2.5 students.
Yeah, but that experience was second to none. What it did was gave me the confidence. Now, I did very well once I got out of school. I mean, graduate school, I found, I learned to appreciate Colgate after I left Colgate.
Yeah.
Because they did teach me how to read, think, and do things, and we go from there. But once I got to the academy, I was finding that we had some very, very sharp people, and we're doing some very traditional things that just wasn't working. That a lot of these young midshipmen really weren't from affluent families, did not understand money. And when you're in the academy environment, almost everything's taken care of for you. You've got to be creative to screw up, even though they do that. But the point being is, we were seeing some very bad decisions taken by a number of these mids in their junior and senior year that was impacting not only their ability to graduate, but also the ability to perform as newly commissioned officers, and impacted their overall career. For example, at that time we had what was called a career starter loan, which was really a car loan. And all the banks would come in and they'd love to give money to the mids because they know they were locked in for 6 years.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was, when you're a second class or a junior and you buy your first car and you have no other obligations and somebody gives you a boatload of money, there's a rule that says if you have a boatload of money and you're buying a car, you will spend the boatload of money to meet the needs of the car that's available to you. So we've got these young midshipmen that are buying Corvettes and high-speed German cars and things like that. Now, here's the cool thing about this. As a midshipman, as a junior, you have no place to park your car. You can't drive it. Only first class or seniors. So I think you see where I'm coming here.
Yeah.
Some very smart people making some very, very dumb decisions, which now you've got this very expensive automobile. It's probably parked at your girlfriend's place. She may drive it and wreck it. Accept it. Well, then we go on the year after that. Now we go to graduation, and now you see all these Corvettes with trailer hitches on the back, which that's not supposed to happen.
U-Hauls.
U-Haul trailers with a newly married couple heading down to Quantico and flight school and these other places.
With a hitch.
And we were finding that the behavior was such that everything was cascading into a setup for failure financially. They were give you another example. A lot of midshipmen go to flight school.
Mm-hmm.
Flight school, you get flight pay. Flight pay is at least 30% more above your base pay. But here's what nobody figured out. You don't get flight pay until you get your wings.
I see.
It may take 2 years to get your wings. But the human mind being what it is, I'm going to be a naval aviator. I'm going to get flight pay. They're already spending the money.
I see. I see.
Then they get down to flight school. They're in a financial deficit. They've got a young wife that thought she was going to be on Top Gun. And it doesn't quite work like that. Again, they're overspending. They think they're going to have the flight pay. They don't have the flight pay until they're winged, or they wash out.
They're making a bad bet on the come, right?
Exactly. But and that's when I really hit me that the consequences of our decisions with money are significant and consequential. Mm-hmm. But the approach for our culture and our society is just be reactive, not proactive. We're going to hold you accountable for your dumb decisions, but we're not going to show you why you made them.
Yes.
And then we're also going to assume that you're a rational individual. You can read and write. All you've got to do is fill out a budget. All you've got to do is this, that, and the other thing. Well, the reality is maybe not. If you're not wired to do a budget, you're not going to do a budget. And I don't care if you got a degree in engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So that led to a number of issues. From the Naval Academy, I went to headquarters Marine Corps. I became an assistant to the budget director of the Marine Corps and had the opportunity to work on broader issues and funding. And there I was introduced to the whole industrial military complex, if you will, and see how money decisions were made. And it got a little conflicted. Well, during that period of time, we decided that we needed a financial management school. So basically, I was charged with building the school, and I went down as a first commander down in Camp Lejeune.
Who were the students at your school?
Marines.
From every level, at every level? And it was voluntary.
Well, in the Marine Corps, we do have an MOS or a specialty for financial management.
Okay.
At the officer level, you're basically a staff officer. It's usually a collateral duty or a secondary duty that, we're not flying planes. You're going to be sent to the Pentagon and work on budget issues. Or you're the person that's working with the House and the Senate to translate military speak to budget speak to political speak. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was there. We started the school. We started doing a lot of work at that time to not only work about budget issues and teach people comptrollership and how to run a budget. We identified the need of personal finance, and we started bringing that into the.
Now I'm clear. Now I'm clear. I thought it was specifically for individual financial.
No,
it was.
We did that. Yeah,
gotcha.
We did that more as an afterthought.
Yes.
And then during that period of time, it became obvious to me that I didn't know anything about training, so I picked up the master's degree in instructional performance technology.
Oh, just picked up a master's degree. How about that?
Which is it's a degree in human performance and workplace learning.
Cool.
and that.
So now you and we're simpatico.
Exactly. Well, during there, I did some normal Marine Corps things, if you consider that normal, and was sent back to Quantico, where I was the head of the Marine Corps Training Management Division, where I was responsible for all systematic training, design, development, and implementation. I was a quality control guy for all the Marine Corps formal schools. I was responsible for training instructors and the process. So I was the keeper of the Marine Corps systems approach to training. Wrote a paper at that time on distant learning. Marine Corps was the first to get into it. I was the catalyst for that. I won a DOD award for something, best paper, best program. Then Desert Storm came around, got tagged for that, and I ended up as the executive officer to General Cliff Stanley. And our job was to go out and kind of figure out, from a systems point of view and a performance point of view, what worked and what didn't. And then then write that up in all the after action reports. So I
Right.
wrote the after action report on a lot of the training. I did it on medical regulating, what worked and what didn't work on medical casualties and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of tying that all together. Came back after Desert Storm, did some more another normal Marine Corps things, and I got tagged to be an aide to the Secretary of the Navy for financial management, which is a nice way of saying is you go from being a hard-charging, snake-eating Marine Corps officer, lieutenant colonel. Now you and your gunnery sergeant are sitting there in the office every morning trying to figure out what you're going to do and who's going to go to lunch and who's going to go run.
Oh.
In that job, I was really the liaison between a number of DoD activities, mostly budget related, plus the House and the Senate. And I did a lot of work with staffers, professional staffers, budget committee, House Armed Service Committee, and the like, and project managers and contractors.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about being an aide with the four-stripe bogey rope we used to call them,
Yes.
that everybody knew who you were, but you're kind of like wallpaper. You're invisible. You go to all the meetings, you get to sit there and you get to
Potted
watch it.
plant.
Yeah. So I got to watch the kabuki dance that we call Washington, D.C.
Making sausage.
Yeah. And it was sobering. That's the best way I can describe it. I can remember a couple of cases where my principal was going to testify on C-SPAN, and my job was the guy in the second row or the first row behind him with the 3x5 cards. So a question comes up, and I go through my 3x5 cards and hand it to the boss. He goes, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, Senator. Blah, 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 blah."
Oh, yeah.
But
You're
what
one
I
of those
learned during
guys.
that time was that this is all choreographed. It's a big show. That before the hearings, we would sit down and meet with the Senate or the House counterparts, and we'd orchestrate and choreograph the hearing, and we'd have what we call cloud papers. And then you come in and everybody's cordial, the lights would go on and everybody yell and scream, the lights would go off and say, "Hey, nice seeing you again, Ted, we'll see you for lunch."
So that's the kabuki dance you're talking about.
That's the kabuki dance. I
Gotcha.
got very frustrated, but it also hit me that the money behavior of these very senior people
Mm-hmm.
who have very, very important positions, spending not only billions, but trillions of dollars, are no different than you and me, walking through the supermarket, filling our cart with an extra $150 worth of stuff we didn't need and forgetting the milk and bread that we were sent there to go get. But
Wow.
they're doing it with a major weapon system or a program like that. So that got me really interested in the behavioral piece. Long story, retired, did some consulting work while I was getting my licensing, became very successful as a financial advisor in the Washington, D.C. area, got a little fed up with it, had the opportunity to come down to Augusta a few years ago to fix one of the firms here, came down and fixed that, went with another firm, fixed that, and then went independent, and then sold that a couple of years ago. And it was there working at the individual level with families that it really hit me that we are doing this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When I mean we, the industry, it's all product. And the assumption is that my product is better than your product, and all you've got to do is own the right stuff for the right reason, and it'll be okay. Trust me. 2008 was an emotional breakdown. It was a behavioral breakdown. It was everybody involved. It was the consumer, the regulators, the product pushers, all acting incredibly like human beings and surprised when it blew up because we were doing human things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I sat down and read, I saw this coming, and I was working with my clients and got them behaviorally engaged to do the right thing. I was adamant about them understanding how they think and feel about money to align the product appropriately. And that turned into my first book. And I really wrote the first book, and I think you had a copy of it. The first book is The Money Makes Me Crazy, Prescription for Money Sanity.
Look at that.
That was my first book. And that was really written as a client book. I gave that to my clients, and I said, "Listen, there's nothing in here about money here, but if you like what's in this book, you're going to like working with me."
Nothing in this book about money?
Well, it's all about behavior. But see, most personal finance books are about, let me explain an index fund.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Let me explain how to do present value, future levels.
So I'm going to cut to the chase. You have a studied, unique, helpful. It's almost like a model you're using at this point. You have a model, and it's not about the money per se. It's about everything about the person as it relates to how they're behaving and what they believe and what they sense, and they're walking through the world, and they may be disastrous with their money. And
Exactly.
that's why you're there. So are you willing to say that you had a client that was really, really, on the cliff? And could you kind of walk us through what you did for that client?
Yeah, I can even go more than, I would say all my clients are like that.
Okay.
And let me explain. Most of the people that come in and work with a financial advisor come in two areas. They're either really busy, they know what they're doing and they want to outsource it, or they're really screwed up in their basket cases and we're kind of the last hope. You cannot make anybody do anything until you get in their head. And my theory, and I do a lot of work with financial advisors, you're going to find out how your client thinks and feels about money eventually. My approach was, let's figure it out early, right up front, and then determine whether we have a basis to work forward. Because I would not take a lot of clients on if you're not. I was not an order taker.
Right.
And I had well, let me give you an example. There was a fairly well-known medical professional, I'll leave it at that, from this town that came in and saw me one day and started ranting and raving and said, I'm going to, he's pointing to me that you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And I yelled at my assistant, said, ask her for a form. And then, when he stopped to breathe, I said, doctor, would you sign that for me? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, what's that all about? I said, I just fired you. I just fired you as a client. I said, he said, you can't do that. Yeah, but I can. He said, here's the deal. I can't help you. I cannot work with you the way you want me to work with. Now, I know some very fine people that would be more than happy to do what you want to do. But I'm not going to put you into Lithuanian oil shares because you thought over the weekend watching some talking head that that's where you need to be. And that's one example. Another example, I had a client who was quite affluent. And we got talking, and I go through an exercise about, are you a saver, spender? How are you wired to work with money? What's your natural? And again, I don't care. It is who you are. And we came in and I went through the assessment, and I said, well, Mary, you tend to be naturally wired to be a spender.
Has Mary met my wife?
Yeah, well, she got very antsy. She says, I'm not a spender. I'm saving $12,000, $15,000 a year. I said, Mary, that's commendable, but you're making $250. So the whole perspective was askewed. She thought you were going to. I needed to put $12,000. I need to max out my IRA,
right,
or whatever,
and that was it.
But she had no context for the ramifications of her spending behavior relative to the reality of what she wanted to be X number of years. And this is the type of person that always says, well, I want to retire in 5 years. Okay. Well, based on the way you're spending and what you have, you ain't going to get there.
How did that end up with her?
What we did was I got her on a behavioral strategy that made it very easy to save and a little challenging to spend. And we did it by putting on automatic payment, automatic bank draft, try to take as much of the required spending out of her hands and basically put her on an allowance. And basically what I said is, once this nets out, go for it. You do anything you want with $5,000 a month. Right. Okay. But before she was doing it reversed. She would spend down and say, oh, I need $5,000 or whatever. Yeah. So there's a good example. Another one is young families. This is a problem. I used to work with a lot of military families. I believe a lot of the problems we have in our country are socioeconomic more than whatever ism you want to hang on the back of it. And a lot of it is a cultural problem. Now, I believe when we're dealing with people and money, there are three things you have to look at. First, you have to look at the biology. We as humans are wired to do some things incredibly well, and money is not one of them. Basically, we are wired to stay alive and pass on our genes. That is the default option for our brains. I want that too. Yeah, with 3 pounds of mush on the top of our shoulders. And that's why most of it's an autopilot. And I can talk about this forever, but I know. Managing money is not what we're good at. Well,
talk about it forever is right, because you have some unique perspective. I think that you're probably and I'm not blowing smoke here. I can do that pretty well, but you're a rare person in this country that really you've been self-taught really. And I love
Yes.
that because, and then you teach people, so I love that because you have something that people really need. They don't know they need it.
Yes.
And I think that there's a way to get at them and get them to, we'll talk about that later, but you're really, really unique. And
Well, I appreciate that.
yeah.
And because nobody's been talking about
brain
this.
stuff, people. He's like all about emotions and how your synapses are and how they got
Yes.
established in adolescence. And this guy knows this stuff, and and
we
willing
are
to
very
help.
emotional. We are very emotional animals who think we're not thinking animals with emotions.
I interrupted you, but tell me the other two things. You said we're not good with
First
money.
is your biology, and you're not
Right.
going to fight your biology.
Right.
You've got to accept that, and we're all wired a little different. And I can even get down to the genetic level and tell you how this all works, but we'll talk about that later. The next part is your belief set. Your belief set is well established by mid-adolescence. And what that simply means is your formative years, when your brain is developing and coming together and wiring itself to be an adult, you're incredibly susceptible to imprinting. Let's call it what it is. I mean, okay, you and a duck, it's not that different in a lot of cases. Well, in most places, we assume that it's going to be your parents that are the major influence on your relationship with money. They're important. But believe it or not, between those your middle school years, when you're bonding and starting to develop your true identity, and you start moving into tribes, for lack of a better term, it's your group, it's your crew, whatever you want to call it. But you have a unique way to talk and dress, and it happens in every culture. Those are the important years with regard to your money beliefs.
Wow.
So the scary part is how you think and feel about money today is pretty much about the same way you did in middle school.
Across the board.
Yeah,
we're
that's
human.
Scary.
And our brains are such at that age.
And it's hard to unwind that.
How much?
The last piece is culture.
Sure, keep
going. I'll go
going.
through that real quick.
Sure.
Every culture has a construct as to what the good life is and what the expectations are, and money and how to spend it. I mean, money has not been around that long. Our concept of money is a relatively new phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that long ago, we were a barter economy living on subsistence farms. So if you want to go through the equivalent of Starbucks back then, you had to take a chicken with you. and you put the chicken through the window, and you better hope they're not making change. You know what I mean? So we've got to keep that in the right context, that money is different, and our brains are wired to do some things very, very well. And I like to say the behavior that kept us alive in the forest is killing us at the mall.
Killing us where? At the mall. Wow.
Or
okay.
The store or online.
So here's my question. The adolescents in middle school.
Yes.
That's where we get imprinted, with our with our beliefs about money, how we value it or use it or whatever. And that's all unconscious, I'm sure.
Yes.
Who's conscious when you're an adolescent? You're
right.
I was looking at girls, frankly. But so what's the variability of that, those core beliefs of an adolescent that you say is being carried into their adult life? How much variability are there in people? Because you're saying we need to know how we're wired about money. And
right.
Are there like 4 or 5 groups or cohorts that view money this way?
Yeah, we've got some studies. I work with a group out of Atlanta called DNA Behavior,
mm-hmm.
and we do a lot of heavy research coming out of that. We've got a whole section we can do on financial profiling and how that goes back to the legacy of your adult. And depending on which study you go through, we look at anywhere from 6 to 10 different indicators. And, like everything else, we'll give you a label. But basically, it's where you are comfortable. It's your default space when it comes to money. It's when you're on autopilot. This is where, and it may be spending. So there are a lot of people that are emotional spenders, but they're also emotional savers.
Mm-hmm.
We just tend to be more aware of the spender because we live in a consumption culture. There are other cultures, Japan had a very, very different approach for a long time, very, very high personal saving rates compared to the United States. Mm-hmm. That's a cultural element.
Yeah, we viewed that as a problem, didn't we?
Yeah. So when you say the different, I don't have any exact statistics off the top of my head. And what I've learned is we can get into a challenge or it can be dangerous trying to label people. If you've ever gone through a Myers-Briggs or a DISC personality style, and everybody stands up for about a week with very proud of their label, you know, I'm an ENTJ and we're this and you're that, and you're going to be the janitor and I'm going to be the CEO. Well, garbage. It's garbage.
Well, you know, that's what's coming out these days, that it is garbage. That's what the literature is saying these days, is that maybe not DISC, I don't know, but they're judging the Myers-Briggs pretty harshly these days.
Right. It's an indicator.
Yeah.
But it's not, we as humans will take that and we will run with it and make it through confirmation bias.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of behavioral and psychology going on here, but basically that becomes our identity and we wear it with pride. To the exclusion of everybody else. My point of view is, I don't care how you're wired. I don't care what label we hang on you. You just need to know what it is.
Yes. And get conscious about it, right?
Yes. And then the challenge is, and I talk about this in my second book, when I was working with Jay Alexander. Jay was the founder of the FUBU Corporation, read the first book, called me and said, we need to get together. After a long story, hold on for a second, I'll grab a copy of the book.
Do I get a copy of this one too?
I can find one for you. Okay, that's
I'm
the
greedy.
one I did with Jay. That's Jay
Wow.
Alexander. He is the author of the FUBU Corporation. I mean, one of the founders of the FUBU Corporation.
Same title.
Yeah, what we're doing is we're kind of building kind of a little franchise things going on there because they kind of tie together.
Fair enough.
We've kind of backed away from that with the next book.
Yeah.
But Jay was a very sharp kid that came out of a middle-class family in Queens, got hooked up with Damon John, started selling hats on the corner, and in 10 years, they've got $1 billion worth of sales. Well, their belief set and culture did not catch up with them until about year 10. So to make a long story short, Jay, because of his culture, felt he had an obligation to spend a certain way to keep a certain group of people happy, that he had to have a posse, that when he went into a bar or a club, he paid for everybody. He's got a story with Jay that they were clubbing in Washington, D.C. over a couple of weekends, and they spent $35,000 one night, had such a good time, he did another $35,000 the next night. There's a story Jay shared with me about him in Vegas. He was out speaking there, and he was playing at the tables, lost a fair amount of money, and he decided to hang it up and leave and put some money in a slot machine on the way out and won $60,000. Now, every normal people that all of a sudden win $60,000, well, what do? You do exactly what he did. He walked across the hall, went into a Rolex shop, and bought a $100,000 watch.
Unbelievable.
But it was 60% off because he had $60,000 that somebody just gave him. So he was able to buy a watch for $40,000.
Yeah, my bell's ringing because we're kind of out of time, but this isn't serious.
Well, let's keep going and we'll see how we can chop it up.
My timekeeping is, it's very fluid, and I can't even get this done. So let me run this by you, and I'd love your thoughts about this. One of my good friends, we go to a men's support group together, church related, and he was talking about himself at a meeting one day, and he said this. He said, when you have a lot of money, it's like throwing gasoline on your character defects.
That's very astute.
Because I don't know, but he is very astute, and he had money at one time. So what do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely true. And again, it goes back to our human nature. Recent studies have determined that the ideal number in today's economy is about $75,000 a year that would give most people what they need to be emotionally satisfied. Anything after that becomes add-on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually stuff. When in reality, most people really get truly rewarded with something that's a little bit more altruistic, but usually you got to go through the stuff phase before you get to the altruism stage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is also the reason that And we talk about this in depth in this book, because this is what Jay went through. Jay squandered $8 million in about 10 years on nothing he can put his finger on.
Oh my.
Okay? $8 million. And when he read the book, he said, you wrote this for me.
Oh.
And we got together and we started putting together. But the reality is that we as humans have the ability to rationalize anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got a big number out there, it's easier to rationalize because emotionally you don't see that coming to an end. Let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Most people think $1 million is a lot of money. Well, maybe, but maybe not. If you're 70 years old and win $1 million, you're probably in pretty good shape.
Yes.
If you're 20 years old and win $1 million and say, I'm going to stop working, that's a whole different scenario.
Right. Right.
Because $1 million in the bank at a 6% rate of return will kick off $50,000 a year forever.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't include taxes. And I don't know where you're going to get 6%. So fundamentally, you can't live on $1 million in the bank if you're 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
But our brains don't work that way. The brains, what I tell people is first you've got to understand how you're naturally wired. And to make it simple, I call it, you got the feeling brain. The feeling brain keeps you alive. It's the fun place. It's automatic. It just does things. It's emotional.
And it's lazy too, right? Do you say that?
Very lazy, very lazy, and it's on drugs, dopamine, serotonin, all that. So you got all this stuff working against you, but if you don't have it working, you're not here. So, okay, your heart stops, you stop breathing, you forget to do those kind of things, which makes for a long afternoon.
Yeah.
But our thinking brain, which is the frontal cortex, and they're all related, they're not, it's not distinct. That's where we do consequential things. So when you sit down and do your taxes, that's a thinking brain activity.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is to when you are in a position to be in a consequential spending position. And when I say consequential, it's going to have an emotional impact, it's going to have a financial impact, it's going to have a time frame to it, and it's something that if you screw it up, there are going to be significant consequences. Now you fill in the blank what it is. The reason we have convenience stores tied to gas pumps now is because that store is designed to attack your feeling brain.
Like I want a slushie, or I want an icy.
The average person is going to drop an extra $5 just by walking through the door,
mm-hmm.
which is fine.
Sure.
If you can afford the $5.
Right.
Now let's go to the next scenario. You're walking into the car dealership. You've already done your research. Your feeling brain has been engaged, and it's worse now because you can build a car and drive it on the web. You can smell it. It used to be you had to go down at least a lot and drool over it. You can get the glossy pictures and all that. But now you can do it on the web. You can change the color. You can add stuff. You can do stuff. You can put yourself in the car. That is all feeling brain stuff, and it's driven by dopamine. Dopamine is the feel-good neuro drug, if you will, neurotransmitter that gives us the euphoria
mm-hmm.
of doing things. And the dilemma with dopamine is it's all in prep. But once you get the goal, the dopamine goes away, and then it takes you on to the next one. It's very much like opioids.
What's the next one?
Serotonin, which is the nurturing feel-good thing. But most of us are spending this dopamine thing. We need a dopamine fix, and that's why you need bigger, better, more.
I just came up with a question for Ted.
What?
Ted, what gets your dopamine going?
Helping people, doing this. I mean, really, it's at the point right now that I've gone through. I mean, give you a point of view. I drive a 2008 Mercury Mariner with 140,000 miles on it. That my wife refused to get in it because it stinks because I keep all my triathlon stuff on it. But I don't drive any place. And I'm tired of car dealers calling me up and say, Ted, you need a car that reflects your status in life. And I go, well, what do you think my status in life is?
That's excellent.
We go from there.
That's excellent.
The point being is it's very easy when you get into these buying decisions, you have to stop, count to 10, and put yourself you've got to have a situational awareness. That's the best way I can describe it.
That's Marine talk.
and you know, yeah, that you're susceptible to the Slurpee, that's fine. That can be part of your regimentation. You add an extra $5 or $2 for that every time you go get gas. I think Starbucks is a better example.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into designer coffee, you spend $1,500 a year on designer coffee, which is fine if it fits into your freaking budget.
Right.
If it doesn't, you just squandered college education for somebody. So you've just got to have an awareness that you know when to absolutely engage your thinking brain, and it hurts emotionally. Your brain does not want to be out there doing this hard stuff.
Yeah.
It wants to be lazy. It wants to go back and conserve energy. Thinking takes energy. It takes emotion, and that's not the default option. But you've got to have something that when you go into a consequential spending circumstance, that you force yourself into a thinking brain scenario. And the easiest way to do this is make a list.
Make a list. Hey, can we close on that? Make a list?
You betcha.
Is that a good place to close?
Yeah, that's excellent.
Well, one more thing. What's on the list? And then we'll close.
Okay, the list is on, let's go back to the car at dealership.
Mm-hmm.
What you put down is your budget, the most you're willing to spend, and the minimum features, not benefits, the minimum features you think you need in your car.
Mm-hmm.
Because the car sales guy is there to do one thing, upsell you into either a financial package or a luxury package or whatever. Case in point, you can spend $2,500 for a GPS system, or you can use your phone that you have with you. It is your call. Now, if you're a traveling sales guy and you're going all over the town, finding places that nobody's heard of, maybe the onboard navigation system makes sense. But if you're like me, I drive from my house to the gym, I do a total of 8 miles a day most days, I pretty much got that route figured out.
Right.
Okay, so I don't need it. And I've also learned, and I've done the big car thing and all that, I've also learned that one, if I really need to be there, somebody's going to get me there.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, there are people that rent and lease cars, usually from places I fly to, that are more than adequate.
Yes, yes.
And
So
last piece is,
sure.
Most people truly don't care.
Don't care
about you. So you made the image, so what? They forgot your name.
But Ted, you just spent about an hour with me, and you do care about me, I can tell.
I do. I really do.
So we're going to wrap it up, people, and I want to again thank you for your time, Ted. It's been inspiring and very interesting, and I just think we need to spend some more time, like in this forum. I'll have you back. And
I love it. I love it. Well,
maybe after you launch your next book, it's coming.
Yep. As a matter of fact, I was talking to the publisher this morning. It should be out in the next couple of weeks. It's finishing up with the graphics and the and what this is we went back to the basics, and we said, let's take a look and do a rework on the first book and really get this thing jacked up. But more importantly, get people understanding that it's all between the ears.
Yeah, well, that last thing that you said about writing down the list, that was totally a thinking thing. That was totally there, and you had to have that in your hand, and you had to go by it. You had to go by it, because that's what you want. That's what you really want. And don't be sold.
Way too hard.
Don't be sold. Don't be sold.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to roll it up and throw it at the guy and leave.
There you go. There you go. Well, on that note, Ted, again, thank you for your time. And
my pleasure.
The people around the world will see this, and they're going to enjoy it too.
Very good.
So take care, Ted.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.